They called me the strong one, the rock, the one who could handle anything. And I wore that title like armor, polished it until it gleamed. No one saw that underneath, the armor was fused to my skin, and inside, I was suffocating. I was the person everyone leaned on, but when I finally fell, when I was lying on the floor too weak to move, I discovered the most terrifying truth of all. My strength had built me a fortress, but I was the only one trapped inside. I was completely, utterly alone.
That feeling of being strong for everyone but yourself, it's a silent epidemic. I'm Susan Bentley, and welcome to Unbroken Women. Today, we are honored to share the powerful testimony of Naomi Davis from Atlanta. She's a woman who had to shatter the very definition of strength that was breaking her spirit in order to find true connection and ultimately to save herself. This is her story.
My life looked good on paper, really good. I had a great career in marketing, a stylish apartment in a nice part of Atlanta, a solid circle of friends. I was the one who organized the brunches, who remembered the birthdays, who sent the just checking in texts. With my partner, Mark, I was the planner, the fixer. Car trouble? I'd call the mechanic. A stressful day at his job? I'd have his favorite dinner ready and an ear to listen for hours. My days had a rhythm, a predictable hum of competence. I thrived on it. I'd wake up at 5 a.m., hit the gym, answer emails before my first coffee, and move through my day like a finely tuned machine. I was reliable. I was capable. I was strong. And everyone, including myself, seemed to love that about me. It was my brand. Deep down, I think I dreamed of something softer. A partnership where the weight was shared, not just shifted onto my shoulders. I'd see couples holding hands in the park, the easy way they leaned on each other, and a strange little ache would start in my chest. But I'd push it down. That wasn't for me. I was the pillar, and pillars don't get to lean. They just have to stand. The weight wasn't a sudden burden. It was a slow, creeping accumulation, like dust settling in an abandoned house. It was the weight of unspoken expectations. Because I never complained, it was assumed I had nothing to complain about. Because I never asked for help, it was assumed I never needed it. With Mark, it was 1,000 tiny things. I'd share a small victory at work, and he'd nod, his eyes already on the TV. I'd mention I was feeling tired, and he'd reply, "You're always busy. You got this." He saw my capability, not my humanity. It felt like my role was to be the steady, unwavering backdrop to his life. I was shrinking, my own needs and desires becoming so small they were almost invisible, even to me. There was this constant low-grade hum of anxiety under the surface, the pressure to maintain the facade, to never drop a single ball. I was performing strength, and the applause was everyone's dependence on me. It was the loneliest feeling in the world. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday. It was nothing, really. A colleague, Sarah, came into my office, her eyes red-rimmed. Her dog had passed away that morning, and she was a mess. Our boss told her to take the rest of the week off, no questions asked. Her team immediately rallied, dividing her work, sending flowers. Later that day, I saw her husband waiting by her car to drive her home, his arm wrapped tightly around her as she sobbed. He just held her. He didn't try to fix it. He just held her in her brokenness. And watching them, I felt this cavernous emptiness open up inside me. For a fleeting second, I imagined it. I imagined being that raw, that sad, that messy and having someone just be there. The thought was so foreign it was almost jarring. Who would hold me? The answer came back instantly. No one. You'd handle it. You always do. And for the first time, that thought didn't feel like a compliment. It felt like a life sentence. About 6 months later, the universe decided to stop whispering and start screaming. It started as a strange fatigue, then a dizzy spell at work that sent me grabbing for my desk. Within a week, I was diagnosed with a severe case of viral pneumonia complicated by extreme exhaustion. My doctor was blunt. Your body is shutting down, Naomi. You have to stop. Completely. For the first time in my adult life, I couldn't handle it. I was confined to my bed. Breathing was a chore, and a fever raged through me. I was helpless, and I was scared. The first couple of days, Mark was okay. He brought me soup, picked up my prescriptions, but his patience wore thin with terrifying speed. By day 4, his visits to the bedroom became brief, transactional. Need anything? He'd ask from the doorway, his keys already in his hand. He never sat with me. He never asked how I was feeling. Not really. He just seemed irritated by the disruption to his routine. The moment that shattered everything came on a Saturday night. My fever had spiked. I was shaking with chills, disoriented, and genuinely frightened. I called out for him. He came in, phone in hand, and stood over the bed. "What's up? The game's on." I could barely speak. I think I need to go to the hospital. I feel really bad. He sighed. A deep, put-upon sigh. He glanced at the TV in the living room, then back at me. "Are you sure? It's probably just the fever. Try to get some sleep." He didn't touch my forehead. He didn't check my pulse. He didn't see my fear. He saw an inconvenience. And in that moment, the entire facade of our life, of my strength, of our partnership, disintegrated. I wasn't his partner. I was his support system. And my system was down. After I recovered, no thanks to him, I ended up calling a friend to take me to urgent care that night. I tried desperately to put the pieces back together. My mind went into overdrive, rationalizing everything. He was stressed, I told myself. He's not good with sickness. I'm too independent. I probably didn't ask for help the right way. I tried to smooth it over, to go back to being the capable, easygoing Naomi. I told him I was fine, that I was sorry for being such a burden. I was apologizing for being sick, apologizing for having needs. But something had broken. Every time he spoke to me, I could hear that sigh underneath his words. Every time he looked at me, I saw the inconvenience. Fear kept me silent. A deep, cold, paralyzing fear. What would I do without him? We had built a life together. Our finances were entangled. Our friends were mutual. Leaving felt like an amputation. And who would want me? A woman in her late 30s who was apparently needy. The world had rewarded me for being strong. It had taught me that my value was in my self-sufficiency. To admit I needed more, to admit I was lonely within my own relationship, felt like a personal failure of epic proportions. So I stayed. I smiled, I cooked his favorite meals, and every night I'd lie next to him in bed, feeling a chasm between us that was miles wide, my heart pounding with the terror of my own silence. The breaking point didn't come with a shout. It came with a whisper. I was back on my feet, but not fully recovered. There was a lingering weakness, an emotional fragility I couldn't shake. One evening I was trying to open a stubborn jar of pickles. My hands were weak and it just wouldn't budge. A wave of frustration and exhaustion washed over me, and my eyes welled up with tears. It was so stupid, a jar of pickles, but it was everything. Mark walked into the kitchen. I looked at him, my face wet with tears, holding this ridiculous jar. "Honey," I said, my voice trembling, I feel so weak. I feel like I can't do anything right now. Can you give me a hug?" It was the most vulnerable I had ever been with him. I was asking, directly, for comfort. He took the jar from my hands, twisted the lid off with an easy flick of his wrist, and set it on the counter. "There," he said, turning to walk away. "You just had to ask." And he left me standing there. The silence in that kitchen was deafening. It wasn't about the hug anymore. It was about the cold, clinical dismissal of my pain. He saw a problem to be solved, a jar, and solved it. He didn't see me. I sank to the floor, my back against the cabinets, and I didn't make a sound. The tears just streamed down my face. All the air went out of my lungs. My strength, my competence, my self-sufficiency, it had all been a performance to earn a love I wasn't even receiving. In that silent, devastating moment, I knew. It was over. The performance was over.
I sat on that cold kitchen floor for what felt like hours. When I finally stood up, something inside me had solidified. The fear was still there, a massive, roaring beast in my gut, but for the first time, it was accompanied by a flicker of something else, resolve. The decision was terrifying. It wasn't just ending a relationship, it was ending a version of myself. I was choosing to step off the pedestal I had so carefully built. I was choosing to embrace the very thing I spent my life avoiding, vulnerability. I knew it might mean profound loneliness. I knew it would be messy and painful and that people wouldn't understand. They say, "But you guys were so good together." They wouldn't see the silent erosion, the slow death of my spirit. But the thought of spending one more day in that silent, lonely partnership was suddenly more terrifying than the thought of being completely on my own. It was an act of rebellion against my own programming, a choice to believe I was worthy of being seen, even if it meant I had to stand alone first.
I did it the next day. I waited until he came home from work and sat him down on the couch. The same couch where we'd watched 1,000 movies, where I'd listened to 1,000 of his work stories. My hands were shaking so hard I had to clench them in my lap. I didn't yell. I didn't list his faults. I just spoke my truth, quietly and firmly. "Mark, this isn't working for me anymore. I can't do this. I'm leaving." The words hung in the air, feeling both alien and profoundly right. He just stared at me, completely blindsided. The shock on his face was real, and in that moment I realized he truly had no idea. Because my needs had been so silent for so long, he never even learned to listen for them. As I spoke, a strange calm washed over the terror. It felt like taking off a heavy, soaking wet coat I'd been wearing for a decade. The cold air hit my skin, and it was shocking. But for the first time in forever, I could breathe. That night, I packed a small bag and went to a hotel. I didn't know what tomorrow looked like, or the day after that. I just knew I couldn't sleep in that bed one more night. The pushback was immediate and brutal. Mark's bewilderment quickly turned to anger, and then to a kind of psychological warfare I was not prepared for. He started gaslighting me. "You're being overly emotional. You've been stressed since you were sick. We were fine until you started acting crazy. You're throwing away 10 years over a bad mood." He painted me as unstable, irrational. He even told our friends that I was having some kind of breakdown. Some of them believed him,
I got calls from well-meaning friends saying, "Are you sure you're not just overreacting? Mark is a good guy." Every conversation felt like a trial where I had to defend my own sanity. But the worst resistance came from inside me. The urge to go back, to apologize, to smooth things over and fix it was a physical craving. My entire identity was wrapped up in being the fixer. The loneliness of that hotel room was a crushing weight. Every night, my brain would scream at me, "Go back. This is too hard. Being lonely with him is better than being this completely alone." I had to fight hour by hour against a lifetime of conditioning that told me my job was to put his comfort before my own needs. I felt like an addict in withdrawal, shaking with the need for the familiar, even though I knew the familiar was poison. It was a constant battle to hold on to the quiet truth I'd found on the kitchen floor against the loud, convincing chorus of doubt from the world and from myself.
Finding my own apartment was the next step, and the loneliness was even more profound. The quiet was deafening. I had spent a decade filling the silence in someone else's life, and now, in my own, I didn't know what to do. I'd walk through the rooms of my new life and feel like a ghost. I'd see a happy couple, and a voice in my head would whisper, "See, you couldn't do it. You failed." I wrestled with the terrifying belief that I was fundamentally broken, too much and not enough all at once, too needy to be with a man like Mark, but too damaged to ever find the kind of reciprocal love I craved. The strong facade I had worn for so long was gone, and I didn't know the person underneath. She was fragile and sad and scared. I hated her. Every day felt like a war between the woman who ran back to the safety of the fortress and the woman who was willing to die in the wilderness for a chance at freedom. About 2 months in, I hit a wall, a massive granite wall of depression. I stopped calling my friends back. I started calling in sick to work. The simple act of getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. All the energy I'd had for the fight was just gone. I was exhausted down to my bones. The loneliness was no longer an ache. It was a physical agony, a hollow space in my chest that hurt to breathe around. One rainy Thursday, I sat on my couch, staring at the wall for 4 straight hours. I felt nothing. No hope, no resolve, just a vast gray emptiness. The thought that kept replaying in my mind was, he was right. I am crazy. I threw it all away for nothing. My phone was in my hand. I unlocked it, my thumb hovering over Mark's name in my contacts. I was so close, so agonizingly close to calling him, to begging him to take me back, to promising I would be strong again, that I would be easy to love again. I just wanted the pain to stop, and going back felt like the only way. My thumb was literally pressing down on the call button when my gaze drifted to a box in the corner, one of the last ones I had yet to unpack. It was full of old books and journals from my parents' house. For no reason I can explain, I put the phone down, walked over, and opened it. On top was a faded purple journal from when I was 16. I opened it to a random page. My messy teenage handwriting filled the page. It was a list titled, "Things I Want in a Partner." It wasn't about looks or money. It said, "Someone who holds my hand when I'm scared. Someone who listens to my dreams. Someone I can laugh with until my stomach hurts. Someone I can cry with and not feel embarrassed." Reading those words from that hopeful, clear-eyed girl who hadn't yet learned she had to be strong to survive, it was like a lightning bolt. That girl was still in here. I had been fighting for her all along. I wasn't crazy. I just wanted what every human heart wants, to be truly seen. I closed the journal, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel broken. I felt a flicker of fierce, protective love for the girl I used to be, and for the woman she was trying to become. That journal entry was the turning point. The next day, I made the hardest phone call of my life. Not to my ex, but to a therapist. It was terrifying, admitting out loud that I needed help. But in that first session, as I stumbled through my story, my therapist didn't call me crazy or emotional. She called me brave. And that one word was water in a desert. I started doing the work. The slow, painful, beautiful work. I learned to identify my needs, and then, even harder, to speak them out loud. I started reaching out to friends, but differently. I didn't just organize the brunch. I'd say, "Hey, I'm having a hard day. Can we talk?" And I was stunned to find that real friends don't run from your vulnerability. They move closer. I started setting boundaries. I learned that no is a complete sentence. Each small step, saying no to a commitment I couldn't handle, asking a friend for a favor, felt like a radical act of self-love. I was slowly, painstakingly rebuilding myself, not as a fortress, but as a home. It took time, but the woman who emerged was someone I was finally proud to know. She was still strong, but her strength was different. It wasn't brittle. It was flexible. It wasn't about carrying everything alone. It was about knowing what was hers to carry and what wasn't. I started dating again, cautiously, and I met someone, David. The first time I had a bad day and started to cry, he didn't try to fix it. He just sat next to me, put his arm around me, and said, "I'm here. Take all the time you need." And in his quiet presence, I felt more seen and loved than I had in a decade with Mark. I had learned that true intimacy isn't about never needing anything. It's about creating a space safe enough to be needy in. If I could speak to that woman on the kitchen floor, the one drowning in silence, I would tell her this: your strength isn't in carrying every burden alone. It's not in your flawless performance or your unbreakable facade. Your true strength is in your courage to feel, to break, and to ask for a hand to help you up. I would tell her that vulnerability isn't your weakness. It is your greatest, most beautiful power. It is the only path back to yourself and the only language that love truly understands.
Vulnerability as our greatest power. Thank you, Naomi, for sharing your incredible journey of reclamation with all of us. If Naomi's story touched you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story matters here. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Unbroken Women for more testimonies of resilience. And click on the screen now to watch another of our powerful stories. You are not alone.